We are talking about the inspiration and the sources of inspiration. We are all living in the times of very easy access to all of the possible sources of inspiration. That means we can easily get overstimulated. I remember the times when if you wanted to see art, you had to look into book or a video, or you had to go to the museum. Now we are surrounded by art everywhere. It's present in the internet in so many ways. I just mentioned one, Pinterest, right? We can use Pinterest and we can absorb so much during one session that we would have to probably spend a couple of weeks to get as much of the visual inspiration as we get on just browsing internet for 1 hour. And this is great, but it's also overwhelming, and it may be in fact taking away your attention from the creative process, and you're just going to stop on the process of gathering the vocabulary, gathering the ideas, and you will never go step further. You will never really put that into action. So it's good to have a proper filter that is going to stop you from going too far. Again, I would like to encourage you to make this list of your sources of inspiration first and stick to it. Like, for example, if you know that good sources for you would be novels. You love reading, and there is so much coming for you from these books that you are reading, and you are thinking about the stories you are reading after, and they're sparkling some interesting process. Just make sure from time to time you're going to read a book, not just look at the projects made by somebody else. The second thing is, when we are absorbing so much, we are exposed to things that may be too similar to each other, for example, because as you know, probably the algorithm in all these social media, they are going to give you more of the things that supposedly are your kind of stuff, your taste, right? So if you are looking at tree houses, soon you're going to be surrounded by pictures of tree houses. That's how the algorithm works. And it's not going to push you any further. So you have to be more conscious, and this is really the curse and the blessing of the times we live in. We have to be conscious about how social media, how the internet works, and intentionally push ourselves a little bit past that, because otherwise we may get stuck very, very quickly. The same happens with your personal creativity. If you are surrounded by just the things in one certain style, you are not going to go that far away from that style, because you are just going to repeat the same ideas, because this is what you are getting. This is another danger. So if you want to look for inspiration online, on Pinterest, on Instagram, I would suggest to diversify, to look for the sources that would be not exactly the kind of art you make yourself. So instead of looking at cards or mini books, try to look at maybe some fine art, maybe bookbinding, maybe calligraphy, things which are spreading to different arts, and they are going to give you elements you can use for yourself, instead of giving you like the ready-to-go list of things you should include in your project. You know what I mean? Instead of recipe, you're going to get selection of your ingredients, and then you let your head do all the mixing and all the processing. I hope that makes sense, because that's how how my brain works. If you could see my Pinterest board, the private one, you'd be very disappointed, because I would be surprised if I have like more than 300 images pinned totally, and I very rarely come back there. I don't do that. I just pin them and I remember them, and in a way That's how it works for me. My brain does the job. I've seen something, and then if I would like to refresh, it's there, but honestly, most of the process just happens here instead of my computer. So this is the way where I'm trying to recycle the ideas and trying to move around them. I just get the ingredients and I'm waiting for things to happen. And this way, it's probably easier also to develop your own personal style because you are not giving yourself so much of the stimulation of the certain kind. Because the more you're giving yourself just one kind of the project, one kind of the art, the more likely you're going to get narrowed and stuck in a place that maybe it's getting boring. Again, to sum up what I want to tell you, first of all, I would like to underline that it's very important you're passionate and curious and you follow the things that are exciting for you. You listen to your heart, this flutter that happens when you see the things are around you, and they, you just want to gather them all together and play, right? You think about that, you pay attention to yourself. But at the same time, you try to diversify the stimulation you got instead of just focusing on one kind of art, one kind of elements. Try to look for different sources, and I mean books, and I mean fine art, I mean music, all together. Look at your list of your favorite things and keep fueling yourself with the things that make you happy. For example, I may be inspired by nature, but I'm not inspired by nature as it is. I'm inspired by the little details of nature, for example. So I will look at the things in my garden and I will see, okay, this little stem here of the lavender, I love the texture of it. I can use it in the project. I can use the color. I can use the piece of flower as it is, right? So that is something from my list, and then I can take it home and work on it in a creative way. So these would be my ideas, how it all works. And I think in general, we have to be very careful with handling inspiration as it is. We have to really intentionally and consciously make the choices, because, as I said, the internet is endless source, but it also has these evil things like algorithm that will try to push you towards things which are not always what you need in your life. Or maybe you have enough and you don't really need to see another fluffy kitten. Well, that's not true. You can always see one more fluffy kitten, but it's, that's... You know what I'm trying to say. So if you want to translate it into an example, let's say it's me. If I would like to make a list of all these things which will be sources of my inspiration, I would look deeply in my own background and I would say, first of all, I am really interested in stories, in history, in all that which is connected to this topic, but also I'm interested in people and people's emotions, and it all shows in the selection of the elements that I use. But I'm also interested, for example, in how the things work. I just love looking at the inside of the machines. I'm interested in the ways things are constructed. That's, again, there's a huge list of the things that I know I like. So I keep adding these elements on my list from time to time, and I come back to them when I want to create something. So, for example, if I now would make a list of the inspirational topics for me, I would say, okay, surely There are some mechanical elements and historical inspirations, right? I love the costumes, that's why I watch historical shows or movies. I love going to museums, and I love old buildings, architecture. All that makes me happy. There are certain things that are more important than others. I love to see a bit of the decay happening. I can see these things are old and they have something to say. I like shiny paints, and I like dark shadows, and I like really bright. So these are things which are naturally my elements, my vocabulary. This is what you can see in my projects, right? When I started creating, and I was looking for my own way of putting things together. I mentioned that in the video before, there was a video journal I made before. I found out that I can get a lot of really cool elements on the flea markets. Again, story of my life. Like I just love all things. And I started putting things together on the projects, and they were not really always matching. I was trying to find the ways to make them work. I used some leather buckles, and I used some cogs and some mechanical elements, computer parts, and I was just happily doing that because I was so in love with how can I make it all to work together and click, right? So it was just great, and it was in a way also expressing my love for history, but also for science fiction and fantasy books that I had for years. And it was all my happy playground. And then one of my friends called me, and he said, "That's really cool stuff you are doing now. It's really, really something different to you were doing before," because I was just decorating boxes and so on. And he said, it's so steampunk. I love it. This, great inspirations. Oh. And here I had to go to my computer and I had to Google steampunk because I had no idea about that style. Honestly, it was years ago, and it was way before steampunk started to be popular. It was just the very beginning. I was really surprised when I looked into the Google images and I found something that would be absolutely my cup of tea. And I was doing that without knowing I'm doing that. So it was just a coincidence, but it shows you how you can naturally get into some kind of look, some kind of style, even without knowing it exists. Or by accident you may create your own style, which is even better, right? So it is natural that if you follow your own personal taste and preferences, you're going to create more, you're going to do it happily, and you are going to have this lovely flow that I think every person should have when they create. How can you work intentionally on finding good sources of inspiration for yourself? So again, first of all, I would really take it seriously. If you feel that you are a little bit lost, try to make a list of the things that make you happy. And it may be a long one, but maybe just make it point by point, one line after another. So this list, and it may be just a short list in your journal somewhere, or it may be like a Pinterest board as well. It's going to help you stay focused on what really makes you happy, and you can always add to it if you want to later. It's not like, of course, your art and your personality is changing over time, and that's natural. The list is going to change as well. So then the second, once you know what makes you happy, start gathering things. Get your vocabulary and get the elements that are your cup of tea somewhere around you. Try to surround yourself with the things that speak your language. That means you can get certain kind of elements when you create collage projects. For example, you can start cutting certain elements from the magazines, or you can buy certain kind of pattern papers that make you happy. you can get some pens that help you create some beautiful calligraphy, or you can go to the flea market and buy some stuff like old magazines and rusty elements. That would be the step. Once you're surrounded by them, it's going to be so much easier to just pick something, look at it and feel like, ding, this is the moment. Yes, I want to play with that. You know what I mean? We have these moments, and the more moments like that we have, the more of the happy creativity is going to happen in our life. Okay, but what to do if we have so much of the stuff that makes us happy? Well, this is a tricky part. You can see I have this kind of style that really helps me use and recycle a lot of elements. So in a way, abundance of sources is not really a problem because I use so much on each project. They are not always expensive ones. That's what I mean. They may be really found elements. Just 3 weeks ago, I got a bucket of the rusty stuff from my friend. But these elements, they may be also overwhelming. If you have too much, try to do a kind of maybe radical step, but try to limit yourself. If you don't know how to do it, sometimes it's just great exercise to imagine that you are packing for, let's say, 1 month of creativity in the place where you can't take too much with you, and you have to pick your supplies. It may be picking the color palette and just certain bunch of scraps of paper and playing with that for a certain amount of time. So let's say we are making like a challenge for ourselves and we get 1 set of brushes, 1 set of paints, maybe 5 colors maximum, 3 or 4 mediums, and favorite set of stamps, just 1 set of stamps, and 1 ink pad, and 5 crayons, and that's it, okay? And that may be really shocking, but when you are working with yourself to push yourself into creativity and into looking for inspiration, this may be helpful. Instead of having so much around, just put what you've got, and that's it. If you are like me, you probably will notice that you really work with the things you see in front of you. So if you have a table, when you have your accessories, you're mostly going to reuse the ones that you had on the table before, because the whole process of looking for the things, it's just sometimes too much. You want to create now, you want to get things going, and if you see it in front of you, perfect. So this is giving you the idea that maybe limiting is a good plan. Finally, the last thing, and I think it's really important when you're working on pushing yourself and looking for the inspiration, is to be brave and not to be afraid to make choices which are maybe surprising for you. If there is something pushing you towards that direction, there has to be a reason, right? And giving yourself the time to think about and to really talk to yourself is never the wasted time. So it's good to think about what is really speaking your language. It's good to make these lists. It's good to discuss this topic with your friends. Maybe sometimes it's surprising, but your friends maybe giving you the best feedback and pointing the things that you've never seen in your own creative process. So you never know. It's good to get that as well. And once you're working on the inspiration, it's really good to trust your natural instinct, because the instinct is pushing you towards your natural way of expressing yourself. And it's really nothing wrong in being different than others. Instead of being different, think I'm original. I'm doing things my way. And I know it is scary sometimes, but this is the best way really to make yourself happy and, pleasing others is never going to pay back in the long run. If you are an artist, you really have to make sure your potential customers are happy as well, and they have the certain taste as well. There are two things you can do. First of all, slowly move towards the customers that may be more interested in the style you are interested in. So, start gradually to gravitate towards another direction and other people, because there's always a customer for what you are doing, I'm sure. And the second thing you can do is to make sure that if you can't stop what you are doing for your customers, you can't push yourself a little bit on the side, make sure you have some time when you create just for yourself as well, so you have your own little field when you can express yourself freely without thinking, is it going to sell or not? Because this is the biggest killer for our creativity, when we have to create the things which are going to be pleasing to others. Well, so it was great to have you here again. Make sure that you're going to give me some feedback in the comments, because I really like to know what you are thinking about this kind of videos. And if you have any questions, I'm here. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell, so this way you are not going to miss any of the videos. And if you have any suggestions for the next topic, let me know as well. It was my pleasure really to have you here, and I hope this kind of video is something that made your day a little bit better. Thank you, and see you.